The coffee cup shattered against the counter, ceramic fragments scattering like her dignity across the worn linoleum floor. Maya Rodriguez stood frozen, her hands trembling as hot liquid dripped from the edge of the counter onto her already stained apron. The laughter that followed wasn't just cruel, it was practiced, the kind of mockery that comes from people who've made humiliation into an art form. She was 23 years old, working double shifts at Henderson's Diner in a town that had forgotten how to be kind, and in that moment, standing in a puddle of spilled coffee while 3 teenagers filmed her on their phones, Maya felt utterly, devastatingly alone. This wasn't the first time, it wouldn't be the last. But something about this particular Tuesday afternoon, the way the autumn light filtered through the dusty windows, the way her feet ached from standing since 5 in the morning, the way her daughter's school had called again about unpaid lunch fees, something about it all made her want to simply disappear. If you believe in kindness and second chances, if you believe that one moment of compassion can change everything, please hit that like button right now. Subscribe to our channel because we share real stories about real people who refuse to give up. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Your support means the world, and this story needs to be heard. Maya had moved to Riverside 3 years ago with nothing but a suitcase, a 4-year-old daughter named Sophia, and a determination to escape a marriage that had slowly crushed every dream she'd ever held. Her ex-husband, Marcus, had been charming once, the kind of man who could make you believe in fairy tales right up until the moment he reminded you that you were worthless, that no one would ever want you, that you were lucky he even stayed. The bruises had been easy enough to hide. The damage to her spirit had been harder to conceal. She'd chosen Riverside because it was small enough to be invisible, far enough from Chicago that Marcus wouldn't think to look for her there. She'd found work at Henderson's Diner within a week, a rundown establishment on Main Street that served breakfast all day and attracted a strange mix of regulars, truckers, and the occasional tourist who'd taken a wrong turn. The pay was minimum wage, the tips were unpredictable, and the owner, Mr. Henderson, was a gruff 70-year-old man who believed that smiling at customers was unnecessary theatrics. But it was work, and work meant she could afford the tiny apartment above the laundromat where she and Sophia lived. The bullying had started small. A few remarks from some local high school kids who came in after school, making jokes about her accent, her appearance, the way she always seemed to be running behind. Maya had learned to ignore it, to let the words slide off like water on glass. But ignoring something doesn't make it go away. It just makes it grow in the shadows until it becomes something darker, something that knows your breaking point and aims straight for it. The teenagers, 3 girls who wore their privilege like armor and a boy who filmed everything for social media clout, had made Henderson's their personal entertainment venue. They'd order elaborate drinks, send them back repeatedly, leave messes that took 20 minutes to clean up, and tip in loose change scattered across tables they'd deliberately dirtied. They called her the Mexican maid, though Maya was actually from Puerto Rico. Geography didn't matter to them. Cruelty didn't require accuracy. Today had been worse than usual. They'd come in loud and entitled, demanding a table that was already occupied, insisting Maya move the elderly couple sitting there. When she'd politely explained she couldn't do that, one of the girls had accidentally knocked her coffee cup onto the floor, then demanded Maya bring her another one immediately. The second cup had been thrown deliberately. "Oops," the girl had said, her voice dripping with false innocence as her friends erupted into laughter. "You're just so clumsy, aren't you? Maybe you should go back to wherever you came from if you can't even handle serving coffee." The phone cameras had already been out, recording every moment of Maya's humiliation for whatever viral video they'd post later. She'd wanted to scream, to cry, to quit right there and walk out. But she thought of Sophia, of the electricity bill due next week, of the medical debt from when her daughter had gotten pneumonia last winter. So she'd bent down, started picking up the shattered pieces of ceramic, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold them. That's when she heard the voice. "Excuse me." It was quiet but firm, the kind of voice that didn't need volume to carry authority. "I think you dropped something." Maya looked up from her position on the floor to see a man standing beside the teenager's booth. He was in his mid-30s, with dark hair that was slightly too long, tired eyes that suggested he understood exhaustion intimately, and a green jacket that had seen better days. In his hand was a $20 bill, which he placed deliberately on the table in front of the girl who'd thrown the coffee. "That's for the coffee you just broke," he said calmly. "And here's another 20 for the mess you made." He placed a second bill down. "And here's 40 more for the apology you're about to give to this woman who's been working since before you woke up this morning." The booth went silent. The laughter died like a candle in the wind. "We don't have to apologize to her," the girl said. But her voice had lost its edge, replaced by something that sounded almost like uncertainty. The man pulled out a chair from the adjacent table and sat down, his movements unhurried. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Let me tell you something about the woman you've been tormenting," he said, his eyes moving from one teenager to the next. "Her name is Maya. She works 2 jobs, this one and night shifts at the factory on Route 9. She has a daughter in 2nd grade who draws pictures of them having enough money to go to the zoo someday. She left an abusive marriage with nothing but the clothes on her back and rebuilt her entire life from scratch in a town where nobody knew her name. She serves coffee to people like you with a smile even when her feet are bleeding in her shoes because those are the only shoes she owns. And you think it's funny to make her day harder?" Maya felt tears burning in her eyes. How did he know these things? She'd never seen this man before in her life. "You want to know what real strength looks like?" the man continued, gesturing toward Maya, who was still kneeling on the floor, frozen in shock. "It's not throwing coffee cups and filming people's worst moments for likes on social media. It's showing up every single day when everything hurts, when you're scared and alone and don't know how you're going to make it through the week, and doing it anyway because someone depends on you. That's courage. That's heroism, and you're mocking it because you've never had to be brave a single day in your comfortable lives." One of the other girls was crying now, her mascara running. The boy had put his phone away. The first girl, the ringleader, looked at Maya with something that might have been shame. I'm sorry," she whispered, the words clearly foreign to her mouth. "I'm really sorry." Maya couldn't speak. She just nodded, clutching the broken ceramic pieces in her hands. The teenagers left quickly after that, abandoning their table and walking out into the afternoon sunshine with their heads down. The diner was quiet except for the soft jazz playing from the old speakers and the distant sound of Mr. Henderson clanking dishes in the kitchen. The man stood and walked over to where Maya was still kneeling. He offered his hand. "You're not alone anymore," he whispered as he helped her to her feet. "I know it feels like it sometimes, but you're not." His name was Owen Mitchell, and his story was written in the shadows under his eyes and the careful way he moved through the world. He was a single father to a 7-year-old son named Carter, a boy who'd been born with a congenital heart condition that required constant monitoring and occasional surgeries that cost more than most people made in a year. Owen's wife, Rebecca, had left when Carter was 2 years old, unable to handle the stress of a sick child, the mounting medical bills, the endless hospital visits. She'd walked out one Tuesday morning and never came back, leaving Owen alone to navigate the terrifying world of pediatric cardiology and insurance denials and sleepless nights wondering if his son would wake up in the morning. He'd moved to Riverside for the same reason Maya had, to start over, to find somewhere quiet where he could work and care for Carter without the judgment of people who thought they understood what it meant to be a single parent to a medically fragile child. He worked as a freelance graphic designer, taking whatever jobs he could find, working late into the night after Carter fell asleep, surviving on coffee and determination. Owen had been sitting in the corner booth when the teenagers came in, working on a logo design on his laptop while Carter was at school. He'd watched the whole thing unfold, the deliberate cruelty, the cameras, the coffee cup shattering. He'd seen the look on Maya's face, that expression of someone who'd been broken so many times that another crack seemed inevitable. And he'd recognized it because he saw it in his own mirror every morning. I don't know how you knew those things about me, Maya said when her shift ended, and they sat together at the counter, sharing a slice of apple pie that Mr. Henderson had gruffly declared was getting old anyway. About my daughter, about everything. Owen smiled, a sad kind of smile that knew too much about pain. I didn't know the details, he admitted, but I recognized the look. That's the face of someone who's fighting a war nobody else can see. I know because I wear the same one. They talked for hours. Owen told her about Carter, about the terrifying moments in emergency rooms, about the fundraising campaigns that never quite raised enough, about the way his son smiled despite everything and asked if the other kids at school could come to his birthday party even though Owen knew most of their parents wouldn't let them come because they were afraid of the sick kid. Maya told him about Sophia, about the nightmares her daughter still had about Marcus finding them, about working until her hands bled and still coming up short on rent, about the shame of using food stamps at the grocery store while people in line behind her muttered about those people. There was no romance in their connection, not at first. It was something deeper than that, the recognition of fellow soldiers in a war against circumstance, against a world that seemed designed to crush people who were already struggling. They exchanged phone numbers, started texting late at night when the loneliness felt like it might swallow them whole. Owen would send her funny memes when he knew she was working the night shift at the factory. Maya would text him encouragement when she knew Carter had another doctor's appointment. They started meeting at the diner on Sundays, bringing their kids. Sophia and Carter became instant friends, the kind of friendship that blooms between children who understand what it means to have less than everyone else. They'd color together at the table while Maya and Owen drank coffee and talked about everything and nothing, about dreams they'd given up and ones they still held quietly in their hearts, about the small victories that nobody else celebrated, about the terror of loving someone so much that the thought of losing them felt like drowning. The bullying stopped. The teenagers never came back to Henderson's diner, though Maya heard through the town grapevine that they'd all been required to do community service and attend empathy training after their parents saw the viral video they'd posted. Only this time, the internet had turned against them instead of with them. Someone had recorded Owen's speech, and it had spread far beyond Riverside's borders, becoming a moment of accountability in a world that rarely held people responsible for casual cruelty. But Owen and Maya's story wasn't about revenge or justice. It was about something more fundamental, about how one person choosing to see another person's humanity can change everything. 3 months after that afternoon, Maya's car broke down on the way to pick up Sophia from school. She was 15 miles from town, on a rural road with no cell service, panic rising in her chest because she was supposed to be at the factory in 2 hours, and Sophia would be waiting and alone and scared. She was on the verge of tears when a familiar green jacket appeared on the road. Owen had been driving home from a client meeting when he spotted her car. He didn't hesitate, didn't ask what was in it for him. He drove her to Sophia's school, waited while she picked up her daughter, drove them both home, and then spent the next 2 hours fixing Maya's car in the diner's parking lot while she worked her shift. He wouldn't accept payment. He wouldn't accept thanks. He just smiled that sad, understanding smile and said, "That's what people do. They help each other." 6 months after that, Carter had to have emergency surgery. The hospital was 2 hours away, and Owen had no one to stay with him during the terrifying 8-hour procedure. Maya showed up anyway, having called in sick to both her jobs, bringing coffee and sandwiches, and a fierce determination that Owen wouldn't sit alone in that waiting room the way she knew he'd sat alone through so many other hospital visits. When the surgeon finally emerged and said the words "successful" and "stable," Owen broke down in tears, and Maya held him while he cried. This strong man who'd been so brave for so long finally allowing himself to be human. If this story is touching your heart, if you believe in the power of compassion and human connection, please don't scroll past without engaging. Hit that like button, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel. These stories matter. Your support helps us keep sharing them. And if you've ever felt alone, if you've ever needed someone to see you, really see you, then you understand why this matters so much. They built a life together slowly, carefully, two people who'd been broken teaching each other how to heal. It wasn't always easy. Maya still had nightmares about Marcus finding them. Owen still had panic attacks when Carter's heart monitor beeped irregularly. They both still struggled with money, with exhaustion, with the weight of responsibilities that felt too heavy for one person to carry, but they carried them together. A year after that first afternoon, on a Sunday when the autumn light filtered through Henderson's diner windows just like it had the day they met, Owen brought Maya a coffee cup. It was handmade, ceramic, with a painted scene of a woman and a man and two children standing together under a tree and words written around the rim, "You're not alone anymore." "I made it myself," he said, suddenly shy. "Took a pottery class. It's probably terrible." Maya held it like it was made of diamond, tracing the painted figures with her finger. She understood what it meant, not just the cup, but everything it represented. The choice to stop being alone, the courage to let someone in, the beautiful, terrifying decision to build something new from broken pieces. "It's perfect," she whispered, and meant it with every broken, healing part of her heart. Mr. Henderson, watching from behind the counter, smiled for the first time anyone could remember and muttered something about unnecessary theatrics while secretly wiping his eyes with his apron. Before we end this story, take a moment to comment below. Hope is never lost. If this story reminded you that kindness still exists, that people still care, that we're not as alone as we sometimes feel, share those words with us. Let's create a wave of hope in the comments together. Life didn't become magically easy. Sophia still had nightmares sometimes. Carter still had medical appointments. Maya still worked hard for every dollar. And Owen still stayed up late finishing design projects. But they faced it all together now. Four people who'd been alone building a family from choice rather than obligation, from love rather than expectation. The teenagers who'd bullied Maya. Two of them came back to the diner a year later, no longer filming or mocking, but genuinely apologizing, asking if they could volunteer serving meals at the community kitchen where Maya had started working on weekends. They'd learned something that afternoon, that cruelty is easy and kindness takes courage, that every person has a story you don't know, that your worst moment doesn't have to define you if you choose to grow from it. And Maya? She kept the ceramic coffee cup on her bedside table, where she saw it every morning when she woke up and every night before she slept. It reminded her that she'd survived the unsurvivable, that she'd found strength in her weakness, that she'd discovered family in the least likely place. On quiet Sunday afternoons, when the four of them sat together at their usual booth in Henderson's diner, Sophia and Carter coloring, Owen and Maya talking over coffee, she'd sometimes catch his eye and remember that first day. The shattered cup, the cruelty, the moment when a stranger chose to see her, really see her, and refuse to let her suffer alone. "Thank you," she'd whispered to him once, months after they'd become inseparable. "For that day, for seeing me." Owen had taken her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "Thank you for letting me," he'd replied, "for teaching me that being strong doesn't mean being alone, that asking for help isn't weakness, that we can build something beautiful from our broken pieces." The late afternoon sun painted the diner in shades of gold, and somewhere in the kitchen, Mr. Henderson was humming while he washed dishes. Sophia laughed at something Carter said, the sound pure and joyful and free from the weight children shouldn't have to carry. And Maya understood finally that survival wasn't just about enduring, it was about finding the people who reminded you that you were worth fighting for, that your story mattered, that hope was never really lost, just waiting for someone brave enough to reach for it. Sometimes salvation doesn't come as a grand gesture or a miracle from the sky. Sometimes it comes as a quiet voice in a crowded diner, saying the words you needed most to hear. You're not alone anymore. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, those words become the foundation of everything that comes after. A reminder that in a world that can be so cruel, choosing kindness is the most revolutionary act of all. Maya Rodriguez was 24 years old, working at Henderson's diner, raising her daughter, and building a life she'd once thought was impossible. And every morning, when she saw that handmade ceramic cup, she remembered. She had been broken, but she was not defeated. She had been alone, but she was alone no more. She had been afraid, but she had found her courage in the most unexpected place, in the reflection of someone else's struggle, in the recognition that we're all fighting battles no one else can see, in the simple, profound truth that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let someone help you carry what you cannot carry alone. The coffee cup sits on her bedside table still, a monument to the day everything changed, to the moment when kindness interrupted cruelty and reminded the world what it means to truly see another human being. And every time she looks at it, Maya smiles. Not because the hard days are over, but because she knows she doesn't have to face them alone anymore. None of us do. We just have to be brave enough to reach out and hold on when someone extends their hand in the darkness, whispering the words that change everything. You're not alone anymore.